Hello. I hope everybody is doing fantastic and had a great weekend. I had a very nice, relaxing weekend after a very busy Thursday and Friday. Last Thursday, I performed Twitch, the concerto I was working on with the CSU Pueblo Wind Ensemble, which was awesome. And we had this big festival of winds with like 400 high school students that I was working with and doing sectionals and all the fun stuff. It was a great weekend. I hope everybody had a fantastic weekend. And I have some very exciting sort of developments from that concerto and just from some sort of learning and practicing stuff that I've been working on that I want to share with you, and I want you to all test out for yourselves. These are things that can really make a huge difference in your practice efficiency, your results of your practicing, your consistency, your confidence in performance, and I'm kind of wanting to get them out to as many people as I possibly can. And the cool thing about what I'm going to share with you today is very easy to implement. It's just a little crazy. So it'll be very tempting to think, oh, that's crazy and weird, and I don't need to do that. But I promise it'll make a difference because it made a huge difference for me. So to give a little background to this and how this relates to the concerto, almost a year ago in May of 2024, I played my very first concerto with my high school band, my former high school band, and I played Black Dog by Scott McAllister. Really, really fun piece. It was a really good performance, and I had a lot of fun with it. But after that performance, I felt like pretty disappointed, and almost exactly a year ago, I did a recital and kind of had the similar thing. After that performance, I felt pretty disappointed. And it's not because my playing was necessarily bad. It was just that there were some mistakes that happened and some things that didn't go quite as well as they had gone in practice. And if for whatever reason that felt really upsetting and disappointing to me. It felt like I had these super high expectations of how amazing it was going to be, and I failed to hit those expectations, and it didn't feel good. And it was actually shortly after that concerto performance in May when I did Black Dog that I reached out to Greg Goodhart, who is a practice coach and has a YouTube channel and all kinds of stuff. His brand is The Learning Coach, actually. And his link to his website is in the description here at greggoodhart.com. Definitely worth checking out that stuff. And I reached out to him shortly after that and sort of described my situation. He said, yeah, that's super, super normal. And that was mostly it. He gave me a few tips and ideas, and then I sort of interacted with him a few more times since then and started consuming his content and kind of seeing the things to do. But I haven't worked with him extensively, and that's actually really important that I want to put that out there, is that it wasn't like I was doing like this private one-on-one coaching with him, which he offers, which I'm sure is fantastic. I wasn't going that in depth with the stuff. I was really pretty much just skimming the very surface of it, and I'm still skimming the surface of it, and I'm working it into my teaching, and it's part of the challenge that I have for you. But fast forward to this last weekend, last Thursday, when I performed my second concerto with the CSU Pueblo Wind Ensemble. Totally different experience. When I did Black Dog almost a year ago, I got on stage, was reasonably nervous, but not too crazy. And by the end of the first page of the concerto, my pinkies were tingling, and I almost couldn't feel them because my blood pressure was so high, and I was freaking out so much. Last Thursday, none of that kind of stuff happening. No, almost no performance nerves. There was a little bit. There's always a little bit of nerves and energy going into a performance. And backstage beforehand, I was pacing a little bit, but that's all normal. When I was actually on stage playing, it felt like I was in the practice room, totally relaxed. I made mistakes. Nobody's perfect. I made some just weird wrong note things, and most of the mistakes I made, I knew that they were going to be there and was anticipating that they might show up, and sure enough they did. And I think if I had more time to prepare, I think I would have been able to iron out those mistakes using the practice method that I'm going to tell you about here in a minute. But it went really, really well. And there were some parts, probably the first 2 pages of it, that I was like, I think that's the best I've ever played it, was in the performance, which is awesome. And it went really well. And the other thing about it too is even though I made, honestly, probably a similar number of mistakes as I made in Black Dog, maybe even more objective mistakes than I made in Black Dog, I left the performance feeling way more satisfied. And I was able to actually pay attention to the positive things that went well. And my mind wasn't just like focused like a spotlight on only the things that I messed up or didn't go as well as my practice. And there were things that did go even better than my practice, which definitely didn't happen with Black Dog. So that's the power of this. I just wanted to sort of tell you a little bit beforehand of how effective just even doing a little bit of this can be. And the best part is it's super, super easy. So let me just really quick talk you through kind of the idea behind this and what I'm actually talking about. The main tool that I used was spacing and a few other little things, but the one that I want you to experience is spacing. And there's all of these cool sort of neuroscience, cognitive science, and different science of learning things that are out there, but I just want you to try spacing to get started. And these techniques are pretty unusual, so it is kind of counterintuitive and easy to be like, oh, that's weird, I'm not gonna try it. But I really want you to try just this one simple thing to kind of dip your toes into it, and then you'll see how powerful it is. So hopefully you can have performances where it feels really relaxed, really enjoyable, with really almost no performance nerves when I was actually on the stage doing the thing. So, in performances or even in lessons, this happens where you have that feeling of like, oh, I played this so much better at home, and things kind of fall apart because you're nervous. This is to kind of get rid of this. And the reason why that happens, and you've probably noticed this, is the more time you have in between things, the more it kind of decays and you forget things, and it doesn't go very well. And it can be even a really small period of forgetting will cause small mistakes to creep in because you can't remember the exact thing that you just did. In practice, we feel like that's not going to happen because in practice, we're doing repetitions back to back to back to back with not as much time for us to be able to really forget. It's all sort of in our short-term memory, in our working memory, and we're working with it, and it's working well. However, when we perform, we didn't just do that little bit. Even you could literally run through the piece like right before you step on stage, but even if it's a 5-minute piece, the stuff that you played at the beginning will have been at a minimum 5 minutes before you started playing it, and you had played the whole entire piece that's going into your working memory. So even if you played it right beforehand, there would still be that period of forgetting, and it's not even possible to do that. So what we need to practice is getting the information out of our long-term memory. And when you've done practice and even inefficient and ineffective practice will get the stuff into your long-term memory, but we need to be able to get the information out of the long-term memory, which is a process called retrieval. And the more fast and efficient we can get at retrieval, the better. And that's what spacing is all about, or spaced repetitions, is practicing that skill of retrieval, which is kind of its own unique skill. So here's how it will work, and this is what I want everybody who's watching this to try. If you want to have better practice, be more confident, be more consistent, this is the thing to do. You can see in the description a very brief write-up of it, but I'll go a little more in depth with each of those just to clarify things. So step 1, choose a small chunk of the music that has been learned and practiced where you can play it accurately. Doesn't have to be up to tempo yet at all. In fact, if it's slow is even better. It needs to be more than a few notes, but no more than several measures. So probably like a 2-measure chunk, depending on the thing. It could even be 1 measure if it's really complicated, or even just a couple beats if it's really complicated. Lean towards a smaller chunk as you're getting started with this, because that'll make it go faster and make it more tangible. So go for kind of a smaller chunk, probably definitely no more than 1 phrase. Probably even aiming for like a sub-phrase or a half a phrase would be a good sort of maximum. So pick a section that you've learned, you can play it. It's one of those sections where like when you do a bunch of reps on it in practice, then it goes well, but it doesn't go well consistently until you've kind of built it up every single time. That would be a perfect section for this. Step 2, in your practice, every time you practice, You're going to play that section slowly enough that you can do it totally in control, totally comfortable, totally in control. If you make a mistake, just skip it, keep going, play through it in performance mode. After you're done playing it the one time, you can sort of notice the things that went wrong and think about it and reflect on it just a little bit. But really the goal is to just play it once in performance mode. And you'll do that at the very start of your practice. Then set a timer for 5 minutes. Go work on something else. Do your warm-ups, do whatever you're doing in your practice. When that timer goes off after 5 minutes, do step 2 again. Play it once like it's a performance. Do not go back and fix anything. If you make a mistake in the middle of it as you're going, just keep moving forward like you would in a performance. Don't go back and do those little micro fixes. No fixing, just performing. Then set the timer again and go work on something else. 5 minutes later, timer goes off. Play it through once in performance mode. And do that for your entire time that you're practicing. So if you practice for 30 minutes, you'll start with a repetition, set the timer, and then do roughly 6 or so repetitions every 5 minutes over the 30 minutes. Do this for a few days. As you're doing it, it might become really easy to do it for 5 minutes. You can then increase the time to 10 minutes, or you can increase the tempo a little bit as well. And you can play around with the tempo, always though making sure that you're slow, accurate, have total control over what you're doing is the most important part of this, probably. It's a very important part though, that you're totally in control. And then after doing that for a few days, at least 4 days, or you could even do a whole week, then play through the entire piece or the entire section and sort of put it in context and see how that goes in context. And it will, if you do it properly, it will go from that spot where you always messed up to the spot where you can completely blank out, you can be thinking about what's for dinner, and it still goes really well. And if you don't believe me, then try it. This is kind of the challenge for you. And you're welcome. Greg talks about this too. Like you're welcome to try to prove this wrong. This is how the science works. This is how our brains work. This is how learning works and memory works. So if you do the instructions exactly the way the instructions are laid out, then it will work for you. It also, maybe if you try it after 3 or 4 days, maybe need a few more days than that. If it doesn't go perfectly on the 4th day, you'll notice that it's already going better. So you'll want to do it more. And the other awesome part about this is you don't have to actually get it right. So it takes the stress out of practice, where you don't have to be like, oh, if I get this wrong, if I make this mistake, I should be able to do this. I've practiced this long and in this many ways, and I should be able to do this at the level of player that I'm at. You don't have to shit on yourself at all. You just play it. If you make mistakes, it actually helps more. You can look up the testing effect. There's a Wikipedia article about it if you want to learn more about how that works and how actually making mistakes helps you learn it stronger. So mistakes are good. It's totally fine to make mistakes. You don't have to shit on yourself about how you should be able to play it. Number 2, it takes almost no time. If you're doing 2 measures, that's maybe 30 seconds to stop what you're doing, pull up those 2 measures, play the 2 measures, get back into what you're doing. So 30 seconds at most every time you practice for a half an hour of practice is 6 times at 30 seconds. 3 minutes of your practice, 10% of your practice time is going towards this. And you can still do all the other stuff that you want on all the other sections, and that's fine. Well, I mentioned this in the comments, but forgot when I was describing it just now. Don't work on the small section that you're spacing outside of spacing. Only leave it to spacing so you can kind of more clearly tell if the spacing is doing the work and helping, or versus other practice stuff you might be doing. So don't do any other practice stuff on the spacing section, just the spacing. So that's it. That's the thing. That's what I want you to try for this week. That's your motivation and your inspiration. Literally getting into this practice science stuff, just scratching the surface, made me go from kind of debating if I even enjoy performing to like having one of my best performances to date. Even my wife, who's watched a lot of my performances over the year, was like, that was awesome. That was like the most authentic and most confident performance that she's seen me do. So it works, doing just a little, And this is just a little bit that you can do to get into it. So I hope that I have you convinced. I hope that you try it. And the last step that I would really love is for you to leave a comment on this video and let me know how it went for you. Will hopefully, for people seeing this in the future, you can go down and look at the comments and see the results other people have gotten so that you actually do it and give it a try. And you can do this again with lots and lots of different pieces that you're working on and sections of the music as you get better and better at it. And it takes almost no time and is way more efficient and effective than pretty much anything else that you could do. I think it's really made a huge difference. So, okay, I'll stop talking about how great spacing was. You can tell I'm genuinely super excited about it because of the difference that it made in my enjoyment of performing, which is pretty important as a professional musician, I suppose. Last but not least, we'll fill out your practice template for this week to get your practice scheduled and organized. You can find a link in the description to go to quickstartclarinet.com/get-started to download your exact template. Here's what mine looks like for the week. Date for the week, reflection of how things are going, goal for what you want to do coming up, what you want to achieve, your plan for when you're going to do it and what you're going to do. Oh, and look, a reminder for doing your spacing. Because, again, I really want you to try it this week and see how it goes. I've been telling my students as I've been teaching this, honestly, the hardest thing about spacing is remembering to do it and then remembering to press go on the timer again after you do your one spaced repetition. So give that a try. Fill out your practice template, schedule when you're going to do it, put it in your planner so that it actually happens, and set any reminders, however you need to remind yourself to actually give spacing a try. Again, it's going to take, over the course of the whole week, maybe 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes. It's not going to take hardly any of your time, and it could literally transform the way that you practice forever and the level of confidence you'll have in your playing, because it did that for me. So give it a try. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments. I'm looking forward to hearing your updates in about a week or at least 4 days from now. Have a fantastic week of practicing, everybody, and I will see you next time on the next live Monday Music Motivation. Have a great week, everybody. Bye.